Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's edition of Advanced Bass Fishing, and really appreciate you guys checking out today's video. And guys, today I want to talk about one of the best type of bass fishing structures for this time of year. And at the time of filming this video, we're in the middle of May. Between the middle of May and about the third week of June, fishing drop-offs or ledges are probably some of the best way to catch bass. These are places that bass move after they get done spawning in a lot of different lakes across the country that have this type of structure. And most lakes do. It's like most man-made impoundments have some level of ledges or drop-offs, some more than others. Like, for example, all the Tennessee Valley River lakes, Gunnersville, Chickamauga, they're full of ledges. And then some lakes, like in my part of the country, like in the Ozarks here, we have drop-offs, like places where points drop off into the channel. And most lakes have some type of structure. So we're going to give you guys some good tips and advice on that in today's video. Also, guys, before we get started, just a quick invitation. I'd like to invite everybody to please consider hitting that subscribe button here to Advanced Bass Fishing. That'd be much appreciated. And also, guys, thank you very much for everybody that's taking the time to just use and bookmark my Tackle Warehouse link for all your fishing gear needs. All you guys that have filed that thing away, and anytime you need to order tackle, you're using that link. You're doing a big part to support Advanced Bass Fishing, and I really appreciate that. Okay, first of all, before I get into this, I want to say one thing about it. The drop-offs and ledges and that type of stuff is what I call hard offshore structure, places that are naturally occurring structures. And it has been my experience over the past 20 years that bass do not use this type of cover as much as they used to, because back before like GPS mapping and all that, these places were pretty much untapped. And some of the first anglers that really figured out how to catch bass on these drop-offs, and I was fortunate enough to be in that crowd back in the late 80s and early 90s, just mopped up on them. But once GPS mapping came out, those areas became very obvious to find, and they got a lot more fishing pressure, and they just weren't as effective all the time like they used to be. Now, there is a window of time, and we are in that window right now. The post-spawn, late spring, early summer is the best time to fish these type of structures, because what happens is a lot of those bass will move out and they'll relate to those drop-offs and ledges. But then once like the thermocline begins forming and water temperatures warm up, they tend to disperse off of there a little bit more. They disperse and they go out and suspend in different parts of the lake, and some of them move shallow, but for whatever reason, they like to hold in these drop-offs in May and June quite a bit. Okay, now in terms of what is a drop-off or a ledge, they're pretty much the same thing. When somebody says drop-off or somebody says ledge, that's pretty much the same structure. A ledge or a drop-off is any type of abrupt change in the water depth. Now, the drop-off can be like a vertical drop-off, or it could be a gradual taper, but regardless, it's some type of a depth change that identifies that. Now, in terms of how the bass relate to a drop-off, there's a lot of different places they position at. They don't just get on one place on a drop-off. I have caught bass that relate to drop-offs, but they're not on the drop-off. In other words, say for example, I'm sitting my boat in 25 foot of water, and if I cast up, 30 feet in front of me, the water is going to be 8 foot deep, and there's that drop-off. And then there's a flat, beyond that 8 foot of water. I've been in a lot of situations where the fish will be way up on that flat. They'll be 30 or 40 feet up on the flat, not anywhere near the drop. And then sometimes the fish are sitting right on the break, like right exactly where it starts to drop off. And other times I've seen them off the side of the drop where they're actually on the bottom. I'll give you guys a prime example. Kentucky Lake is a perfect ledge, quote, drop-off fishing lake, or it used to be. It used to be a lot better than what it is now. But I have caught fish at Kentucky Lake thrown up way up on top of the flat, close to the ledges, in like 4 to 5 foot of water. And I've also caught fish like on the bottom of the river channel in 20 foot of water, 25 feet of water. They're on the bottom of that drop. So one of the things that you have to do when you're fishing drop-off is you have to really determine where those fish are positioned at. Now, a lot of that can be found with, electronic technology. You guys know that I don't use that a lot here. I pretty much use nothing but two-dimensional sonar. And so the way that I fish a drop off is the way that I prefer to fish a drop off, where I use that two-dimensional sonar to put me on that ledge or close to that ledge. And then I will experiment and I'll try to figure out if those fish are way up on it or on the drop or on the bottom. And sometimes I'll pay attention. One of the things you can do on two-dimensional sonar is you can graph the drop-off part, the deeper part of it, and you can see if there's any fish or structure or irregular features down there. And a lot of times also, if you have a lake that has grass on top of the flat, that is more conducive to those fish moving a little bit, farther up there. A couple other variables about it, you will always find that the ledge bite or the drop-off bite is better if the lake it has some current moving through it. So if they're generating current, that tends to activate those fish on those drops. I would say that drop-off or ledge fish are the most current-oriented fish in terms of their behavior of any group of fish that I fish for in any type of structure. They feed accordingly to different type of generating schedules. Not to say you can't catch them, any other time, but they really, really get more active when they're pulling water. So some of the top techniques to start out with, the first thing I always do when I'm fishing a ledge, guys, is I throw a big deep diving crankbait. If there's any active, aggressive fish there, they are going to hit that big deep diving crankbait first. Usually you'll catch, several fish doing that, and sometimes some of the biggest ones, but they get off the crankbait pretty quick. And then after they get off the crankbait, that's when you have to go back through there, either with maybe some different colors of crankbaits, different angles of retrieve, timing, or you have to switch lure categories. So usually what I do if I'm fishing drop-offs is I've got a sort of a lineup of lures I use. I'll start out with the big deep diving crankbait, and then after that I'm either usually throwing like a big swim bait, some type of swim bait that I can fish close to the bottom. That's deadly, guys. A big swim bait, just right along the bottom, is a great way to catch them on drops. I'll go to a football head jig. Sometimes I'll use a Texas rig worm. Sometimes I'll use a spoon, hair jig. There's a lot of different things you can use with fishing those things. Shaky head, drop shot, just depends on the mood and the personality of the fish. But one of the things about it is for the most part, when you're fishing drops, you're dealing with schools of fish. You're not dealing with individual isolated fish. It's very rare to catch just one bass on a drop off or a ledge. Most of the time those fish are grouped up. And in order to catch as many of those fish as you can, you sort of have to cycle through lures, and you have to cycle through different times of the day. And you never know when they're going to bite. I mean, I've been to some places where they bite right off the bat, and then you can't hardly get a bite after that. And I've also been, to situations where they bite in the afternoon. So you just sort of have to figure out the best time to be there. But another thing with that is, like when you're fishing drop-offs, try not to get on the most obvious part of it, because a lot of times some of the real obvious places on a drop-off are like where a creek channel intersects the main river, which is very obvious on mapping. Try to look for those areas that are out of the way and don't look as good on your mapping system, because anytime that you have a ditch or a channel that intersects with the main river channel, everybody knows where those are at, and they get a lot of fishing pressure. So I have done better trying to get away from those type of areas. So I'll stay on the ledge or the drop off, but I try to get away from the obvious areas there. And sometimes those fish will move off of those real obvious areas just to get away from the fishing pressure, because this is the time of year ledges get a lot of pressure. They really do. But guys, I've had some outstanding days fishing ledges, man. I used to do it a lot back in the 90s, a lot, and early 2000s when I first got on this technique, when not a lot of people were doing it. It's so fun. And the biggest tournament I ever won on Table Rock Lake, the Central Pro-Am Titleist tournament, I caught them cranking ledges there the first week of June on a DD22 crankbait. But it is some of the funnest fishing, because sometimes you'll get into these big schools of fish, and they're big fish. And I've done it down at Grand Lake. I've done it on the TVA lakes. I've done it here in the Ozarks. And it's addictive, man, because I've had probably a dozen different days on the water where I've caught like multiple 20, 25 pound bags in one spot, cranking ledges or fishing ledges. It's one of those. It's one of those type of fishing patterns that you can get on the honey hole, what they call it, or the, you know, the just the mud. You can hit the mother lode. That's probably the best way to put it. Ledge fishing gives you potential to hit the mother lode, but a lot of times it's feast or famine. It's like fishing ledges. It's like if they're there, most of the time they're going to bite, or you're going to get a couple of them to bite. It's not like you have to go covering a lot of water. It's about a spot. And also, guys, most every good ledge fishing day I've ever had, it's like you're casting right there. It's like you're casting within like a little 10 or 20 foot area. And for whatever reason, there may be a stump or a rock or whatever down there that they relate to. And that's usually where you find them at. So anyway, guys, hope it helps you guys out. We'll talk later.